I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have the meeting agenda before you. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Schoenfelder, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Tipp. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Educational plan, we follow that, and it's up there on the board in each of our school board meetings. And Ms. Schoenfelder is going to read our mission statement.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. Recognitions and upcoming events. Anybody have anything?
It is National Heritage or Hispanic Heritage Month, so I made sure that we.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Oh, great.
So we're just making sure that we recognize that through our schools, our e-news. I did put something out on Instagram if you're following me in Soup, just to recognize the work that we're doing for Hispanic and Latinx families.
I had the pleasure of coming back into Red Wing on Saturday night, seeing the mural for the first time. And the meeting we had at out at Treasure Island, back when they talked about that mural, it was beautiful. My wife and I both commented on that. So I want to let people know that as they come into Minnesota from Wisconsin across the bridge, the mural's on the city building now. I don't remember who owned it before that, but you can't miss it as you're driving, making the curve there. So, all right, anything else? Anybody? Public comment? Superintendent Wagner, did you receive anything?
No.
I did not see anybody signed up back there. I did not receive any emails either. School board reports. Anybody have any school board reports? Yes.
The American Indian Parent Advisory Council met last week, and they are working with Allegra Allegra SMECHEC to plan something for Indigenous American Day, or Indigenous, help me say it right, Nikki.
Start over, do it again.
All right, they are planning the Indigenous
People's Day.
People's Day, thank you. That's,
But in Red Wing, it's Chief Red Wing, a lot of people don't understand this, that the city had made a proclamation since 2014, I believe, to call it Chief Red Wing Day too, but
yeah, so that's going on.
Okay. Anything further? You have something?
Just negotiations update. We did meet with the custodian group in the last week. We have a notice to start negotiating with the support personnel, and we continue negotiating with food service.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? LMC met while we were having our workshop, so I don't have any, no update there. Administrative reports. Superintendent Wagner.
I have a lot. First is the introduction of Chris Pika, who's been our HR consultant for the last 3 or 4 months. I don't know how long it's been out there. And our new talent development, recruitment, retention, human capital specialist.
Oh, geez.
So I'm going to invite them up just to the front really quick, just to introduce themselves, if that's okay with the board.
Come up here, please.
So I'll talk a little bit about Chris and her work, and I'll let her talk about herself. Is currently our human resources consultant, is the director of human resources in Owatonna, so she's graciously been working with us, as well as Lisa and the district office to streamline our human resources. And then Paige Heimerman is, again, the talent development, recruitment, retention, human capital specialist, just hired. So I'll let Chris talk a little bit about who you are and the work you've done, and then we'll have Paige introduce you and a little bit of your background.
All right, well, thank you. It's actually been really a great pleasure to work in Red Wing. It's nice to get to know other districts and how things are set up, and I've picked up a few things that I don't mind sharing with, bringing back to Owatonna. I've been in HR for way too many years to count, but with schools in particular for about 23 years. And so I'm here, Martina had contacted me and I said I would help out just to get some more streamlined systems in place, to get a little bit more technology use instead of all the paper. So those are some of the things that I'll be working with Paige on. And she'll be working a lot with, I'll be training her for as long as she needs to be trained. First, starting with mainly the daily management things, and then working up to the bigger projects that might include more negotiations or employee development, performance development, things like that.
I'm Paige. I am excited to be here, first of all. I've been working in HR, specifically in school districts, for about 10 months now. I've gained a lot from my experience at my previous job and from my internship with Chris last summer, and so I'm excited to help get those processes rolling and procedures and get everything tech savvy.
Well, on behalf of the board, we want to first off thank Chris for helping us out, filling in. And she's heard great things from Superintendent Wagner, and we really appreciate you coming over, helping us out.
Yeah.
So, and Paige, I want to welcome you.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you. I know Superintendent Wagner wasn't involved in the process at all, but she's found out, shared with us some of your tools and things you bring to the thing, and we're excited to have you on board also.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything?
Can I get your title again? That was long. I have my pen ready.
So there's multiple different ways I've seen it
Okay.
between my door name
Okay.
tag and everything. Talent development, recruitment, I think retention as well, and human capital specialist.
Ooh, I might have to get an email from them.
Yeah,
We're trying to figure out how to put it in the signature.
yeah. It's 2 lines in the signature, so.
Come up with a fancy word that you can tagline off of all your,
I was gonna say TDR HC specialist.
there you go.
Mhm.
TDR
HC.
HC specialist, there we go, see, we go. Got
Or you can just know me as human resources. That works too.
it. HR, there we go.
One thing just to put in the space too is that we reconfigured the position so that we are, looking at our marketing and retention and recruitment and onboarding. And so while it is some human resources pieces with guidance from Costa, with succession plan, we really need to be purposeful about our marketing and our recruitment. And so we're really going into those skills too with this the reorganization. Also, just as a highlight, Lisa Ryder is Director of Finance and Operations, so she has her fingers in human resources, and so we have a dynamic trio here, really to capitalize on building the personnel piece that we have. We want to build on. Well, thank you both, and Lisa. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thanks.
All right, I will go through, I added actually 2 pieces just because we had a few things pop up today. So I'm gonna go through a little bit. Wagner Wednesday is set for Wednesday, September 27th. It is a bring your own brown bag lunch, whatever that looks like and feels like for you, to Bay Point Park. We are actually starting to theme out our Wagner Wednesdays, so they're not just global. And so Allegra Smishek will be joining me, that we're gonna talk a little bit through our organization as superintendent, assistant to director of teaching and learning, and we're going to be focusing on academic achievement. So because we just recently had our data release, we're going to be able to just really focus in on what is the vision for teaching and learning and tier 1 instruction and curriculum, and so Allegra will be part of that conversation on Wednesday. Again, open to anyone who is available to come and give feedback and bring your lunch. And wants me to remind everybody, bring your lunch. We won't have brown bag lunches for everybody. Real quick, we are starting our 3rd week of school. I have phenomenal building leaders who have responded to many different things, from kindergartners having a hard time leading their parents to parents having a hard time leading their kindergartners. And just kind of the nuances of opening lockers and figuring out plans and loving kids or supporting our teachers. So I would say going into week 3, we've ironed out some of the kinks, not all of them just yet, but teachers are working hard, support professionals are here. We are kind of contending with some subbing issues, so we're thinking methodically about that. I will say kind of the mantra, 5 buildings, 1 team is very real. So as the building leaders have always done this, but it's just, we've kind of elevated that mindset of just working together and filling in the gap. So that's the first 3 weeks of school. The next piece is, I dripped this out a little bit during our workshop, was a proposal of a book study called The Governance Core. So Michael Fullen and Davis Campbell have actually written a book. So Michael Fullen is very much about coherence. One thing that I shared with the agenda personnel committee was it may be good for us to streamline a little bit of how we work together with the questions and thinking about how governance and management look and feel very different. So the book is actually designed around 5 key elements: governance mindset, a shared moral imperative, a unified cohesive governance system, a commitment to system-wide coherence, and then a focus on continuous improvement in the district. So it's just a proposal. We can maybe talk about it a little bit more. For those of you who don't have a lot of time to read a book, I tried to find the audiobook version. It does not exist. But because we're all very busy too, that's not something that we can commit to. I'm going to kind of bring some tidbits of information. I'm reading the book. So kind of sharing it out on how to optimize this, all of us as a board and a team, and thinking about the governance and what we do collectively, which kind of aligns to a little bit of the workshop work that we do too. So if any of you are interested, just taking a peek at it, I have a copy that I'm reading through. But I'll also take feedback individually when we have some time. So if you are just burning for a nonfiction read, I have one. And then a quick piece, we will update you on all our field trips that are coming. I know that Burnside is planning a trip for 3rd graders to the Young Acres Apple Orchard on October 4th and 5th. And the purpose is actually to meet some of our science standards. So thinking about how do we get back with Earth, getting back to how that aligns to our science standards. And we are, I think, a community that really thrives on different field trips, and I think we have a lot of opportunities. So this is just one of the ones that's coming up currently in the fall. We have several throughout the year as well. So anything else for that, Jen? Kind of highlights what the goal is for that. And then probably the 2 biggest pieces for all of you is, I'm just going to give you a quick update. We did have a freezer malfunction before school started at Sunnyside this morning. So when we were trying to figure out something more pressing came up, and there was actually a malfunction. I'll have to read this for you, but there was, in the walk-in freezer in the door, there is a heat strip that actually shorted out and started the plastic seal on fire. And so by the time somebody caught it, there was already enough smoke damage to the freezer and all of the contents of the freezer. The actual kitchen itself is unharmed, but it did leave a little bit of an odor. And so Red Wing Fire Department did respond. We were able to ventilate and then just make an executive decision to ensure that the building was safe, students were safe, staff were safe. So we were still in session. We did have a really good plan B. So in the event that we would have had to close schools, we had transportation all lined up, communication rolled out, having several pieces of communication rolled out via email, and then a mobile call we sent out. So the bad part of the story is that the current door is no longer, actually the entire freezer company is no longer in business, so the door replacement is not an option. We also made an executive decision in building and grounds with the guidance of Lisa Ryder, Director of Finance and Operations, not to piecemeal it together. And so we're working with a couple of other districts who recently had a similar situation. So we will be using a freezer truck to house our food that we have. Nothing was salvageable. And so we are working with our insurance company in that capacity, but Nutrition Services is working hard to ensure that we have meals for kids. So there will still be meals, whether that's a bag lunch or some combination. We are using ClinicalUp as well to tap into the nutrition resources. That's kind of where we're at. That was a lot before 10:30 a.m. But I will tell you, a fantastic team because everybody showed up. It didn't matter who you were, between Jess Pena and Lisa Ryder, Ika, our building principals, Don Gaylor, building room. So 3:15.
What school is this again?
Sunnyside.
Sunnyside.
And then last but not least, just a quick update, I did meet with transportation because we've had so many transportation pieces come to just fruition as we're working through the first 2 weeks of school. It was a pretty productive meeting in that we talked through, collectively, I asked our building principals to give some feedback on lived experiences, transitions and transfer spots. We talked about optimizing the other buildings that are actually, not buildings in Red Wing, but other charter schools that are actually using our busing and how to kind of finesse the time in between, so there's not such a disparity in transferring kids at our transfer sites. And I was also able to work with Creekstone today to talk through some of those pieces. So while I was working with transportation to talk about what can we do to optimize, I asked other critical questions like where are you at with hiring bus drivers? So they're down a couple of bus drivers. They've combined a couple of routes to try to optimize that. One thing they're asking from us is just a little bit more communication, to understand what's happening on the end user lived experience versus actual execution. So we have decided to meet once monthly to just stay connected. The one piece of information that they shared with me for the community is to encourage our parents to get into the bus app, because that is going to be your best line of communication in the moment when you're trying to figure out where your child's bus is. And so we talked a little bit more about the communication that's coming out maybe relatively late, and so it's impeding our parents or our students to be able to have a successful experience. So there are a lot of things that we covered. It's not perfect, but we are working towards the same goal to make sure that the lived experiences for the buses, the bus drivers, our parents, our students, and then our buildings as well. So that's a lot of admin updates. So any questions?
Question, I just was wondering, were you able to clarify, do we still employ through the district a router, which is an independent position of the bus company?
I think everything is, and we do, okay.
We contract with CISO for the routing, and then the transportation is handled by First Student.
Do you know offhand what we pay for that router?
And offhand, I can bring it back for you. And I think it's actually a
There's
shared,
two routers.
there's 2 routers, so it's a shared routing position, but we also have Raven, who also works with us. Jen's up there, so she's kind of knows.
And who is that chain of command that, like, who oversees the routers, or like, how does that chain of command look?
Our partner. It's more of a partnership, so Jerry Reed is actually our new Terry, just to put that in perspective. So today I had Jared meeting with me, the 2 routers, Raven, and then Philip, who is like the general manager of all of First Student. I feel like they work in tandem with one another, but not necessarily the same system, if that makes sense. I can get more clarification. With that said, October 16th, I've invited them to come and speak for themselves. So
I think though what's paramount is that there's some issues with the line of communication, right? Like I suggested, like you have people contacting the bus driver and bus drivers making decisions. You have people contacting the bus company in Raven who are making decisions or saying they can't make a decision. And then you have transportation who people are emailing, there's no names, it's just transportation at Red Wing. And they're not very prompt in a response, but yet we're told sometimes that you have to go through them. And then you have people contacting the schools or you as the superintendent, and everybody's kind of working on their own, making decisions on their own, or turfing it to somebody else. It's not really clear what that line of communication is.
So maybe that's one of the items that they address when they come in too. I mean, I can find something out in the interim. But I did invite them in personally just because I think we're gonna have a lot more to be able to share out with them when they come in, and maybe we'll have them talk through that.
Before then though, because that's a month out,
Yeah.
we're in parents with frustrations, where do we send them? Who do they call?
Yeah, she just said in the interim, she's gonna get that information soon.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that.
For sure, they did message to me today that getting into the app will give you like real time, although sometimes I heard that the app isn't in real time, the bus hasn't moved. But any like pertinent information that has to be blasted out through the app will be in the app. So anything like, hey, bus number 86 is delayed by 27 minutes, it's going to be put into the app. But I will find that out, the hierarchy, and then what do parents actually contact for more information?
Yeah, I don't need to know the answers right at the moment, but I know that our, first student contract is up for renegotiation. What is our contract timing with CISO? Like, when is that? How long are we contracted with them for? Especially before like that meeting, that would be good to know. And then, like, to Rachel's point of how much are we paying for that? Is it something that's worthwhile continuing? Or would it make more sense to have somebody in-house that could manage that? Because we have run into issues before with, routing decisions being made by people who don't really understand the terrain of the city. When you're making the decision based on a flat map versus,
What the streets are.
right, what the streets look like, how they actually function, how snow and ice builds up on them and whatever. Yeah, and I don't know but those are things that I was thinking about is what do those contracts look like? How long are we locked in? And if we wanted to make a change, at what point do we need to do that? Like, when we talked before, this was a few years ago, I was on board, less than 3, but it's been a while. We talked about the option of us having like a transportation person and not having routing go through CISO, and it was that it would take like a year for that person to get up to speed to be able to start it. Like I feel like we had the discussion in like the summer, and it was like, no, you can't hire somebody in the summer and expect them to start that in the fall, that they would have had to have worked alongside the bus company for a year to be able to, take over with that. So I guess those kinds of timeline things. What are our contracts like? If we made a different choice, whether it was with the routing, with the bus company, any of those things, what do those timelines look like? When do we need to be making these decisions? Because there's the immediacy of right now, fixing it for the parents and the kids who are dealing with it right now, but then also making the plans to make sure that we can have it better next year.
Ms. Tiffany?
In the short term, are the routes being looked at? Are they constantly checking to make sure that what they're doing is as efficient as possible and making changes in bus stops and things that's needed?
I felt like today when they were sharing out how they were able to combine and optimize some, I think some other pieces that are coming up, which has been common practice, is the 2-mile route and those that are very close but under the 2-mile route, and the communication and understanding which students are where so that they can optimize extending that out further. So that was just a short part of our conversation today, but
I know one of the things they've said previously is, wait 2 or 3 weeks so that we can figure out what this is going to look like. But, that's understandable, we need to be patient, but in the meantime, I'm hoping that they are continuously looking at that and analyzing and making sure that the feedback they're getting is taken into account, and they're recognizing that there are some significant problems for families and just are willing to make the changes. And I know that's not something you can do right now, but I think just keeping that line of communication open and making sure that they are figuring out what needs to be changed in the short term.
I think also meeting more frequently at the district level with just communicating and just getting the conversations like front and center is going to be helpful too. So that was an action item that we put in place today.
Okay, any other questions with the administrative reports? Okay, we'll go on. Anything else, Superintendent?
That's all I have.
Consent agenda. Anybody have anything they wish to pull off the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ossendorf, second by Ms. Stiff. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Relations and grants. Superintendent Wagner.
We do have 3. So from Kristen Swenson, we had a child-sized play tent for dramatic play that was donated to Cobble. And then from Red Wing Framing, the value of $665.94 is the framing of Soar Art from Red Wing Kingston. And then last but not least, Dear Crest Senior Living, $170 value of 34 teacher survival kits for Sunnyside Elementary. I actually had the luxury of seeing one of the survival kits Hanson, it was a lovely addition to the teaching staff, so, and they're very appreciative of that, so. All the donations are very valued, we appreciate all of them.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful donations. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Motion by Ms. Bjornstead. With her hand up.
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Ossendorf. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstead?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you very much for the donations. Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, did we ever move forward at all with the Angel Fund and a milk carton? You know, changing that more to a milk fund, now that kids can't get a free milk unless they take a free lunch.
So I don't know if we saw that in the conversation, I met with Jess Pena, and talking about actually creating a different one that would fit that, as opposed to keeping the annual fund was designated for one specific cause, so we would have to rename a different fund that could be donated for.
We will do that. I think it's something that people are interested in doing. Okay, great question. That's right, come on up, please. LTFM revision. Good evening.
Good evening. Let me start by explaining exactly why are we talking about this and why is there a revision. In July, which is typical of the time frame, we must submit by July 31st our application for the long-term facility maintenance plan. It's a 10-year plan that the state requires. We submit something that tells them what we expect to spend in those 10 years. And additionally, there's a revenue application sheet. Those were submitted. What happens then is the state staff members for this department will look over every district's plan. They focus on 2 years. They focus on fiscal year 24 and they're focusing on fiscal year 25 because that is the dollar amount that needs to go into the levy process, which we are also in the midst of that process right now too. So come September 8th, those sheets need to go out to all of the districts for the levy certification. A part of that is the long-term facility maintenance plan. You have to have it marked yes for approval, and then they will have the dollar amounts included in that. We received communication from the Department of Education, Long-Term Facility Maintenance Department, saying that our plan had a couple of things they wanted us to change. The gender neutral restrooms that we had in there for 25 and 2026, and there was a small amount for 24 that was indicated. Unless you have a complete, like all planned out drawings, everything done, that you can actually show the square footage before, the square footage after, and exactly what that's going to look like, they don't want it in the levy yet. Okay, we are not at that point, as most districts aren't, and that's why they were like, who's ready for this? None of us were. It was new legislation, and it was something that they were still figuring out in July. So therefore, the revision before you is basically to not change our total dollar amount of expenditures, but rather replace those dollars back into the maintenance plan and carry that forward, because we had kind of moved it from there up into that area so that we could kind of work with that. We are under a formula for Red Wing Public Schools where the revenue is generated based on the number of pupil units. And so the aid isn't changing any. So they were able to do our levy sheets saying, yes, our plan is approved, and to provide that revenue included in our levy. So that's not changing anything either. But this is a follow-up step where they want the board to approve this revision and understand that for us to understand what is necessary then, now that they have further guidance, to be able to actually put that back in the future. So before you is those revisions are inclusive of those revisions. Again, dollar amounts did not change in the end for the expenditures either. Our plan is to continue to spend those dollars on the necessary needs for the long-term facility maintenance of the district.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Recommendation? I wish to make that recommendation? Oh. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote on that.
I move to approve the LTFM revision. Second.
Motion by Ms. Ossendorf, second by Ms. Schoenfelder. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstead?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. And the next thing is levy certification.
Yes.
Been a busy person.
So this is that time of year. For those who do not know the schedules for schools, we are actually looking at a process that's called the levy certification that accumulates information from all the school districts in the state so that they can take and calculate what it is that is our portion of levy dollar amounts that we can levy with our taxpayers in each of our school districts. So September 8th, they push these sheets out. They are 39 pages long, formulas all over the place on those sheets. If you want to read them, you just need to make sure you can have it magnified enough to see the numbers, right? So as you go through that information that they distribute on the 8th, they tell us right up front, there's a lot of things that are still in the works, things that they're still working through the process. They get all this information from all the districts in the state, so it takes them time. And so some things are behind, right? As of this morning, there was another run that changed our numbers. I have 2 areas that are still in flux, but I wanted to share with you, and I gave extra copies to each of you on your table tonight that basically summarizes exactly where we're at this point. And I do have a comparison to the previous year, so you can see that. So the idea is that there are 2 areas I mentioned. The ice arena is still not the proper amount, so we're working with the department on that item. And the second one is the adults with disability. There was legislation change that allowed for districts to go ahead and start up an adults with disabilities program in community education. They have learned, based on the interpretation of the language, that they're going to need to do something for those who already have a program, because their formulas keep reverting back to the formula when our program's already in place and we may already have an established program which actually requires more dollars. So we're being grandfathered. Currently, our reports as of this morning do not reflect the grandfathering. They did 2 days ago. So it's just something you really have to keep an eye on. Like, it was good and then now it's not again. So I'll call and check with the right people to make sure that we get that addressed. This is the reason why many districts at this point in time of the month, because this must be certified by every school board by September 30th. So in order to get to that point, you know, there's this back and forth that's happening and things that are continually changing and shifting. So oftentimes what districts will do is they will certify at this time at the maximum, is what it's called. And that allows then for these adjustments that still need to get worked out with the department, that those things happen by October 2nd, then they send the file on all of the districts' behalf to the counties. And that's how the information gets to the counties for them to move forward with their information to the taxpayers. So at this point in time, the motion before you is for approval of the certified levy at the maximum. And I also want to mention that it's at this time we want to let our taxpayers know that we do plan for the Truth in Taxation hearing to be held on December 4th as well at the 6 p.m. time period. So there will be a form I'll be completing for the counties, so that can be also published on the property tax statements for our taxpayers.
Any questions? There's a recommendation. We wish to make the recommendation.
I will make a motion to approve the proposed 2024 levy at maximum.
Motion by Ms. Tiff, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Roll. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Lisa.
Second reading of policy 504, student dress and appearance. Any questions, Ms. Superintendent Wade?
Yes, so we actually just implemented the emergency last week. So we had a principal meeting last week with about 77 agenda items. That's probably a reality. We have a bonus principal meeting tomorrow that we are going to hone in on the implementation of the current, I mean, that has nothing to do with this reading right now. There's no put it in the space, but I will be working with building principals to understand just educating our staff, support professionals, and understanding where we are at currently in the emergency versus what the language says, in response to that. So I know that that was some concerns that have been coming up to me. So That's more background knowledge for all of you. It was a second read, but feedback.
Good question. Any questions on that? Okay. Final reading of Minnesota Policy Revisions 2023 legislative updates. Yes.
I have a question on 613 graduation requirements. It says that our district assessment coordinator shall be a high school counselor, and that is no longer the case, correct? It is now Emily Seafeld. I'm just wondering if that needs to be changed in the policy then. I completely agree with the change. I think it's a good change. The counselors have so much on their plate, and it seems appropriate to have Ms. Seafeld doing that. But it does not say that in policy. 613.
Good catch. Okay, so with that correction, anybody want to make a recommendation to approve the revisions of policy 406, 604, 613, 616, 624, 708, 709, and 806 as presented with the change to 613?
So moved.
Who said that? Ms. Bjornstad, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Roll. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Great. Meetings and upcoming adjournment, I just have a couple things. There's a volleyball match starting at 5 minutes at the Redmond High School Gymnasium, so if you're out there listening and you got nothing you'd like to do better than come watch the young athletes participate in a match against, who they playing tonight?
Yes.
Cotter.
Cotter. Winona Cotter, okay? One other thing, when you get the board book out, the information, if you have any questions ahead of time, let Superintendent Wagner know. She might have some of the answers that we're trying to look for. If you have anything that comes up, obviously, things come up during the meeting that you know, but if you have some questions ahead of time, feel free and we get those, she can try to get those answered. Wagner Wednesday is noon at Bay Point. Bring your brown paper bag lunch and come on down and listen to what they have to say, and there'll be a few time for some questions. Everybody wants to have an opportunity to ask questions when they come down there, so. And we also have training a week from Thursday, the 28th at 2 p.m. in 106, 108, whatever it is over there by community ed.
Oh, that's for 20.
Yeah, there's school in session, so we'll be leaving the classroom. So we'll be over to the next community at that meeting room there. And then we have we have a leadership meeting after that. So, anybody else have anything? Our next regular school board meeting would be October 2nd?
Yes.
Second, because the 16th is,
October 2nd.
So you were ready.
and that's a 5 o'clock workshop. So, anybody have any other updating, anything else for the board?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rose, second by Ms. Schoenfelder. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Lightning fast.
That was lightning fast.
We need the hammer again.
We didn't have a lot on the agenda, so
Okay.
I know there's some people saying they wanted to get to one, all that.